Most of us are so blessed when you look at the whole world in general. And I just didn't feel like I had the right on paper. It looked like I had a great life. So it did take me a while to admit that. But once I admitted that to myself, I went on a journey of self-discovery and to uncover why or what the source of this unhappiness was.
Welcome to Give a Heck. I am your host, Dwight Heck, and for much of my life, lived my life in quiet desperation, wondering how I was going to pay the bills, take vacations, save for retirement, and one day wondering if I would get off the hamster wheel of life and have purpose. A life that most of society lives, which takes us to work, then home, then repeat, and pays us hopefully enough just to survive. The harsh truth that most live with more month than money and have no idea how to live life on purpose, not by accident. This ensures the mass majority are living not just financially broke, however emotionally and mentally as well due to financial pressures. In each episode, I will introduce you to thoughts, ideas, and guests that can help you to learn how you too can live life on purpose, not by accident. Good day, and welcome to Give a Heck. On today's show, I would like to welcome Betsy Pepine. Here's a little bit of information about Betsy you may not have realized. What if the life you built on paper looked like success, but in your soul it felt like a slow suffocation? Betsy has the credentials, the career, the outward wins, but something inside her whispered, there's more. In this episode, she opens out about the moment she stopped living by default and started living by design. Betsy is a best-selling author, speaker, and entrepreneur who walked away from the paths others expected and carved her own. From a pre-med student to navigating divorce and reinvention, she chose to break free from metaphorical boxes that bind us and keep us small. Her book, Breaking Boxes, Dismantling the Metaphorical Boxes That Bind Us, has become a lifeline for those ready to challenge the limits placed on them by society, by circumstance, and by themselves. As she writes, boxes aren't always square, and some are cleverly designed to keep us confined. She went on to build multiple businesses, including Pepine Realty, and founded Pepine Gives, a nonprofit that supports families facing housing insecurity. With the support of her mentor, Barbara Horkan, Betsy's journey is proof that when you stop living on autopilot and start giving a heck about your purpose, everything changes. If you've ever felt stuck in life that looks good but doesn't feel right, this conversation might be just a wake-up call, but didn't know you needed. Let's get into it. Good day. How are you doing, Betsy?
I'm doing great, Dwight. Thanks for having me.
No problem. And I apologize to Barbara. Pronounce your last name. It's one thing I forgot to practice.
Corcoran.
There, thank you. Corcoran. And anybody that's watched Shark Tank knows who she is. She's quite the amazing person, actually. I quite enjoy following her on social. But anyway, so at the end of the day, I like talking about a person's origin story to start this all out, to find out the good, bad, the indifferent. Sometimes it's great. Sometimes there's a little bit of hills and valleys. And sometimes when we hit adulthood, we realize and look back that there was a deciding or multiple deciding factors that helped us shape into who we are today. So can you do me a favor, Betsy, and please tell me your origin story and the things that have happened in your life that have gotten you where you are today?
Sure. I would say the first thing is I was born a identical twin, and I think that definitely has impacted my life probably more significantly than anything. Having somebody, a carbon copy of me, always by my side and having a built-in best friend has been just beautiful for me. But I was born of one of three kids, three daughters. We were born in Philadelphia, then we moved to Gainesville, Florida. My father is and still practicing at 84 years of age. He's a practicing cardiologist at the University of Florida. And as a result of that, my sisters and I watched him very passionate about his career and his academic work and research, and volunteered with him in the hospital, and was really my parents kind of teed us up to all be physicians like him. And that was very meaningful in my life. I definitely felt that there was a lot of expectation for me to follow this path as well as my sisters. And the path was laid out for us. My parents did a very generous job of creating opportunities for us, both in terms of opportunities in the medical field as well as educationally to be able to pursue that if we wanted. My two sisters did go on. They were pre med. We were all pre med. We all went to the same college. We were all pre med. And then they went on to become physicians. I did not. And that was really difficult for me, just internally, because I did feel so much pressure and I felt like I let the family legacy down, not pursuing that path. I really knew that that was not in my heart. I knew I would not be happy. Um, but it took literally a decade to get over that feeling of disappointing the family and letting them down. But I pursued a degree in business and went on to business school and pursued, interestingly, a career in the pharmaceutical industry. I think in hindsight to kind of balance the fact that I had decided not to pursue a career in medicine, but at least I would stay in the healthcare profession. Um, it wasn't something that I was particularly passionate about, but I was attracted to the other things that that career provided me. It was a great career in terms of income and benefits for the family. I was the primary breadwinner when I was married. I had two young daughters. I had a lot of time at home. I didn't have to take a lot of work home at night. I didn't have to travel that often. So I kind of liked everything the job provided, except for the actual work of that I did every day. And so that was definitely a conflict for me. I felt a little bit disingenuine, not, really, I don't want to say caring, but not really um, feeling much emotion if patients and healthcare providers used our products. And that was definitely hard for me to do. So 10 years in, I was 30, well, about 9 years in, I was 31. I got I went through a divorce. My children were 1 and 2, and in a very short period of time, I was also laid off. I was involved in a corporate restructuring of a pharmaceutical company that I was at, and had never ever been laid off before, and never without a job. I mean, I've been working since I was very little, and I think those two events, because they happened so close together and they were fairly significant in my life, it just made me pause, put my life on pause and reevaluate what path I was taking. And was this the direction that I really wanted to continue? And I ended up moving back home. I was living in the Northeast at the time, and I moved back home and regrouped. It took me a couple of years to figure out what I wanted to do. I did consulting while I was figuring it out, but I ultimately decided to pursue real estate as a career. That was something that I had um, dabbled in the past. I loved it. My parents had always had different investment properties growing up. I saw them having and enjoying alternate or multiple sources of income. So I thought I would give it a try. And I did. And that was about 20 some years ago. And I fortunately loved, I mean, I knew I would like it, but I didn't realize how much I would enjoy it. And I truly love it. And so I've been working in that industry for the last 20 years. So that's my origin story in a nutshell.
Well, that's great. Thanks for sharing. So you went from not wanting to deciding that the doctor stuff. I hear this a lot of time. I went through it myself. We feel like we have to follow the path or the expectations from our parents to do different things. So you decided not to go to and through finish pre-med, went into business to work in the medical industry. It's full circle because you're still being a people pleaser. You're still trying to please the family. And,
Mhm.
and I like how you were honest about the fact that you really weren't, it wasn't your niche. You were doing it. So when the corporate restructuring happened, was that the moment that you realized that you were living in somebody else's expectations, or had it creeped up on you and you just kept on pushing it back?
No, it was definitely, I kept pushing it back. It wasn't something that was like a light switch. I definitely felt it. But but had I not been laid off, I would still be in that industry. You know?
Yeah. So you were blessed in some,
Yes.
in many, many ways, things happen for us, not to us, and people just
Yes.
don't understand that. That's hard for us as adults as we grow up, especially trying to teach younger adults, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's something around the corner. There's a reason that didn't work out for you. And many
Right.
people, when they can seek that out, have that much better of their next story, not even their next
Mhm.
chapter, the next story of their life. So thank you for sharing that. Um, that foundation of your life, the beliefs you inherited and questioned early on, is so connected to the heart of your book. From what I've been reading, obviously, I haven't had a chance to read your book. You've become a champion of helping others recognize the invisible limits they live within. Let's open that up a bit. Your book, Breaking Boxes, is such a powerful metaphor. What inspired you to write this book, and what do you hope readers take away from it?
Um, what inspired me to write the book was I'm 56, and in my late 40s, I was recognizing that I was growing increasingly discontent with my life. And it did take a good year for me to even admit that to myself. I didn't feel like I had the right to be unhappy. We are so blessed. Most of us are so blessed when you look at the whole world in general. And I just didn't feel like I had the right on paper. It looked like I had a great life. So it did take me a while to admit that. But once I admitted that to myself, I went on a journey of self-discovery and to uncover why or what the source of this unhappiness was. And I explored and still continue to explore different modalities, including meditation, yoga, therapy, EMDR, bioenergetic work, breath work, journaling, a whole host of things. And what I uncovered, the common thread was that this feeling of being confined. And I relate it to if you've ever had the misfortune of ordering a bed mattress from Amazon. It arrives at your door in a box and you lug it in from the porch and you you open up the box and you're thinking they sent you the wrong thing because how in the world could this king size mattress fit in this small box? And lo and behold, 2 days later, there's a mattress in your living room that's expanded to the size that it was meant to be. And I felt that I was that mattress in that box and feeling like I had so much more in me that was but something was keeping me was holding me in and contained. Um and so then I wrote the book because when I started sharing my stories with others, they would share their stories with me, and I understood this to be a universal theme with humans. Some of us more advanced and along the path than others, and a lot of people wanting help identifying the boxes that are holding them back. And then once we have the awareness, how do we negotiate them? Are they truly serving us? Did they ever serve us? And if they're no longer serving us, why are we choosing to stay in them? So that's why I wrote the book. My goal was really if I could help one person identify one box that is no longer serving them and give them the courage and the tools to extricate themselves from that box, that's what I want. That was my purpose. So that is why I wrote the book.
That's amazing because I know when I wrote my book, it was based on obviously things I've gone through, valley despair to highs and the highs and lows of life, and you get camped mentally and sometimes physically, and we forget to climb, and we're always living on expectations of others. And I think it's amazing that you used the fact of, again, people listening, hopefully you caught that. Remember, she started pre med, went to business, working in the same industry as her siblings and her father, and then pivoted and realized because of a corporate downturn that she can now do what she wanted to do. And moving forward to that, now we're bringing into the world a book about, pardon me, breaking boxes is just amazing because so many people are afraid to be vulnerable with society about their challenges and their character building moments. And really, at the end of the day, to be a person that heals and then helps others is fantastic, and I'm proud of you. And I say that to people because I had to learn that self-centered growth myself, that I had to work on me in order to serve others. And
Mm-hmm.
once I had those realizations, why wouldn't I want to share that to collapse
Mm-hmm.
timeframes for others? So
Mm-hmm.
congratulations. That is
Thank
that is
you.
amazing. Is there any one thing that you could share as to why people stay in their boxes so long when they no longer serve them?
Well, there's a couple things. One is you cannot get out of a box you don't know you're in. So the first thing is there's a subset of people, and myself, I include myself in this, that aren't even aware of some of the boxes that are holding them back. But then once we're aware and we find ourselves still in them when we know they no longer serve us, it's usually a fear-based response, a fear of failure, a fear of change, or a fear of loss. Those are the three main fears that I have found keeps us in boxes that no longer serve us.
Wow. What are some of the boxes? Are they defined by anything? Like, could you say, like, what are typical boxes that
Yeah.
people tend to put themselves in? Would you mind discussing that?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many there. And the
We
more
don't
you,
have to share them all. Just share what you feel comfortable with.
yeah, no, but I mean, the more you get into this, the more you realize they're everywhere. And because we're humans and we have the ability and, and it's a blessing that we are able to categorize information and assimilate so much information so quickly. But because of that, we have to simplify things, we have to categorize things into boxes. I think it started, we're hunter gatherers. And I'm sure back in the day, the very first boxes were this is a threat to my life and this is not good or bad, right? And then it just built from there. A lot of the boxes that I see are revolve around the roles we play. So whether it's the mom, the father, the wife, the daughter, what does it mean to be a good daughter or a good wife or a good mom? Those are very common boxes. Roles around our religion, certain religions, there's certain expectations. If you are I'm a Catholic. If you're a Catholic, you must be X, or you must be, I people stereotype and think I must believe certain things because I go to a Catholic church. So religion is one. Our industry could put us in certain boxes. Our gender, for sure, absolutely puts us in boxes. Sexual orientation puts us in boxes. I mean, it goes on and on. I mean, our personality traits. I am by nature an introvert. People really understand introversion and extroversion, I have found. And when they hear that I'm an introvert, they make certain assumptions about me that are not at all true. But it's you see the minute we slap a label on someone or ourselves, the more is assumed than just what that label might mean. And we can become stuck in those labels. So those are some of the common boxes, but I mean, family of origin boxes are big, like the box
Learned
that I was in,
behaviors. Yeah. Learned behaviors
and
are so strong.
yeah, they are. I was talking to a gentleman the other day on a podcast, and I was asking him, like, what boxes did he face? And he said his family of origin box he felt like was um in his family, the firstborn son in every generation was named John. So like John the first, John the second, John the third, all that. So he had like John the fifth, or he had the first son and it was John. And he had to break it to his family that he was not going to follow tradition. And that caused a huge break in the family communication for over a month because he didn't want to carry on that tradition. And I was like, wow, like that's one I have never experienced personally, but I could see the pressure in that. So we all have, regardless of what family you're born into, there are certain things, there's certain boxes that your family has placed on you by nature of being born in that ecosystem.
Oh, yeah. The expectations we put on ourselves, that the people above us put on us, people that
Mhm.
even passed away within our family tree, like you were saying, putting pressure on us. Name this kid
Right.
this, name this kid that. I was, like my family wanted me to take over my dad's business. I was the
Mm,
only boy, two older sisters, very, very good entrepreneurial business, right? In my home community, it was only 10,000 people dealing with the rural community farmers,
Yeah.
but it wasn't my calling. And I still
Hmm.
remember the conversation I had with my dad. Oh my goodness. And I could see his heartbreak. He didn't show it on his face, but I
Mm.
could see it in his eyes, right? He's a
Yeah.
very staunch, he was one of 18 kids. So
Oh, wow.
he learned to control his emotions. My mom was one of nine.
Oh,
So yeah, so just the expectations of, I like how you talk about it though with the boxes. People talk about, framing, what are you framing things and reframing? And they talk about, I always talk about it with people. Yeah, we compartmentalize. I don't use the
hmm,
word boxes, but we
hmm,
compartmentalize, we stuff it back. And
hmm,
the long-term consequences is something I'd like to ask you about. What is the long-term consequences of us constantly doing that? Having
hmm.
everything in boxes stuffed down. I know myself personally, the part of the answer, it affects everything, not just it affects your
Yeah.
health, your relationships. But could you
Oh,
talk about that and what your experiences have been?
yeah. I mean, it affected my sense of like self-worth because um when I decided not to be a physician, I very much felt, and whether it was real or imagined, it felt very real to me. I felt like I had been I was knocked down a couple pegs in um the hierarchy, or not even hierarchy, but the value in my family. I definitely felt that I was almost like, the scarlet letter A, the Hester Prynne. I felt like I was no longer respected as much as, because my two sisters became physicians, they married physicians. So I was really the only one that was not medical. And growing up in our family, being a physician was, we were told it was, I mean, truly like second to God. I mean, this was the most esteemed thing you would want. So why wouldn't you obtain it? And we were told the only reason why people aren't physicians is because they couldn't hack it. Like you would never not choose to be one, but it's just because you couldn't maybe make it academically. And so I really felt less than for a long time. And so it did affect my self-esteem for decades, really. Um, but I think it's just, but even if it doesn't affect people's self-esteem, I just think it's it limits the potential that you see in people. I remember it, and what this also has done is it's called out how often I have put people in boxes, unknowingly or not intentionally, and meaning no harm. As simple as, I was talking to a girlfriend one day, and she was over at my house and she had to leave because she was going to a dinner party. And she said that this dinner party, it's a rotating dinner party, and it was a club where they pick a country every month and they meet at somebody's house, and then they bring food and wine that is representative of the country. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. Whose house is it at? And she said, Father John's. And I was like, Father John? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, Father John, the priest at St. Francis? And she's like, yes. And so, I mean, I was very surprised. But then I said to myself, why am I surprised? The only thing I know about Father John is he's a priest, right? I didn't know he loved wine, but I assumed in my mind, for some reason, that that's not something a priest would do. I wasn't like judging it. It was more just like very surprised. And it's like, why am I surprised? I know nothing about this guy, right? So we just make these assumptions based on very little information. And we truly stop see like, there's this idea that, and I see it I saw it with my raising my children. The minute you label something, you stop seeing it. And so the example is, I'm walking my children through a forest, and we actually did this on a regular basis when they were very little. And I would point out all the different trees and the leaves on the trees and the different shapes of the leaves and the different colors. And we have pine needles here as well as normal leaves here in Florida. And they were so enamored by this thing that we did on every walk. Well, then when I started teaching them, this is a tree. I remember the day Maria would pull my hand and she'd say, Mom, come on. We know it's just a tree. So it's like the minute you give something a name, they assume they know what the concept of a tree is. We don't need to explore it further. And that's what we do with people, I think. Once you slap a label on somebody, oh, they're a cop, they're a priest, they're an X, they're whatever, they're an introvert, whatever word you're going to label somebody, then you assume so much more about them, and the curiosity almost stops because we think we understand everything there is to know, and we know very little. So I think that's the long-term harm of putting people in boxes. We know very little about um, them.
Oh,
And
absolutely. Like the generational labeling, it just has to stop. It really does. And I look at the fact of, oh, you talk, and by the way, I'm Catholic too. I'm a practicing Catholic, right? Doesn't make me a good person. You can stand in a church and not be a good person. You can stand in a garage, you're not a car, right? You gotta have actions. You gotta have things that
right.
you portray to people.
Yeah.
And we get labeled by association. So here's what I mean. People listening, watching on YouTube, go to conferences. I've been to hundreds of them, right? Sometimes speaker, sometimes an attendee, sometimes it's a educational conference, sometimes I have to be there because of my industry and what I do. And people will come up to me and say, "Oh, I hear this, and that about you." And I go, "Oh, really?" So they don't know anything about me. They've labeled me and put me into a box based on the conversation they've had with one or others. Those
Mhm.
listening or watching, don't do that. So
Mhm.
here's what I suggest. I go up to people and I introduce myself, and I take the preconceived stuff that people have told me or that I've read. Maybe I'm meeting Betsy, I've read about and never talked to her. And I give them a modicum of respect and treat them like a discovery. I want to discover who this person
Mhm.
is, not about what they can do for me.
Mhm.
And that's something you have to practice to put yourself back and listen. Be a
Mhm.
good listener and discover what that person is. You can take what you've been taught about them, but don't you dare put somebody into a box until you actually research and have a conversation with them. So anyway, I'll get off my soapbox.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
You need
Yeah.
to not label one another. You're right though. Like I'm good friends with priests, many of them, and they
Yeah.
like sitting back. I know priests that like playing cards. They like drinking. They like drinking not just wine. They like take. My dad and mom growing up in a small community used to invite the priest over, and
Mhm.
one of them just absolutely loved having a drink of scotch with my dad. Another one liked whiskey, and
Yeah.
I'm a little kid going, huh? What? This isn't what I'm taught in Catholic school. Like, isn't that like wrong?
Yeah.
But my dad, I said to him, I said, "What? Father, such I wasn't very old.
Yeah.
Drinks after they left? Well, yeah, he's a human being.
Right.
Nowhere in the Bible does they say they can't drink. Jesus offered, like, look what he did. Look what he did for the wedding, creating the wine. Like, come on, Dwight, think about it. Like he was trying to tell me, like, you learn
Yeah.
this stuff, but actually don't just listen,
Yeah.
analyze, make your own.
Yeah.
You make your own decisions. So I
Yeah.
like that you shared that.
Yeah.
That is so good. Anything else you like that before I go on?
Well, I like the having the mindset of curiosity, going in when you talked about meeting people, like just be curious. Things
Everybody's
aren't,
got a story.
they
Everybody's got
do.
value. Everybody's got vulnerabilities that can make you heart centered to them or push you away. You're looking
Yeah.
for your tribe. You're looking
Hmm.
for your people. You don't
Yeah.
need a lot to have a satisfied, give a heck life,
Hmm. Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So it's so powerful to see how many boxes we end up. We've been talking about that self-constructed or silently absorbed people. What does that mean? Learn behavior. Everybody
Hmm.
around you, you're growing up, your aunt, your uncle, maybe you're close to the neighbor. They all have an influence on you. You may not realize, and they can be that person that's helped create that box, and you
Hmm.
silently absorb yourself into it. It's
Yeah.
really hard. isn't it, for us to define ourselves as a unique human being.
Yeah.
I see it happen all the time where people will start being friends with somebody and they start mimicking their behaviors
Hmm.
or their laugh or their sense of humor. What's your thoughts on that and why we as human beings tend to not be unique, but develop unique habits and behaviors from other people?
Well, I think mammals tend to mimic other mammals, in their tribe, because I think we are a tribal species and we have to be in a tribe to survive. I just got back from South Africa, and I am always reminded when I'm there. I love the animals, and it is so it is so painfully obvious that riding solo in the jungle, animal species, they don't survive. They will not survive on their own. If you are alone or injured, your days are numbered. And so we have to fit in to some extent to have a tribe to be safe. I truly believe. I mean, just or how we were I mean, how we've been evolved, that is the case. And so my guess is, I mean, I'm not a scientist or anything like that in terms of human behavior, but my guess is it has something to do with that. Is it's underneath it all, it's a survival mechanism.
Oh, definitely. And you know, like you said, you can't survive on your own. Some people think they can. Together, we're strong as a group. And now
Hmm.
it's finding that group, finding
Hmm.
that group that will listen when they need to listen. They'll give you advice when you need advice, as well as listen.
Hmm.
And there's the ones that'll just be really blunt and give you that kick in the pants that you need. And creating those associations um, comes at a price. Creating those positive associations, people listening or watching, comes at a price. And here's what I mean: you will start having people that you won't offend intentionally, but they're offended by your change, your
Hmm.
growth. Why
Hmm.
aren't you hanging out with me as much?
Hmm.
Oh, we were best friends. We used to get together on the weekends and do this and that and whatever addictive things they may have done, and maybe not addictive. And literally, you need to understand, people listening or watching, your associations, what you listen, watch, who you hang out with is precious. Don't discard the fact of how much power you have over your 6 inches between your ears and how much you can grow. So, how are associations in your life? Did you, as you went through all this transitions from, excuse me, from, pre-med business and, just reinventing yourself, how did your associations change? And what's your thought process on how important our associations are with others?
Well, my associations changed dramatically because I moved from, so when I got divorced and laid off, I moved from Philadelphia back to my hometown. And when I tell people that, they think I moved back to Gainesville, Florida, which I did, but I moved back to my childhood bedroom into my parents' home with my two kids. And my children were living in my or sleeping in my what was my former sister's bedrooms down the hall, and we were all, and then I was in the room right next to my parents. I was 31, 32, 31, just 31. So my associations changed because I physically removed myself from the environment that I was in, but I did that very consciously because honestly, I knew that if I was in the environment that I was in, I would have stayed in an unhealthy marriage, and I didn't want that. So I needed to be out of that environment to um, to have the support that I needed to get out of the marriage. Um, so my associations by design, I wanted a different reference group. Um, but I think you bring up a good point. A lot of times we actually stay in these boxes because of fear of loss and these loss of social connections. Because anytime you make a change in your life, I look at it almost like a chess game, and you've moved a piece on the chessboard. So the entire game has changed. You're going to upset some people. They're going to be threatened. They're going to be offended. They're going to have an opinion about what you're doing. Um, and so your your relationships will change. That is a given. But I always say, knowing that, be proactive. We're a social species. We need connections. Shore up connections for your future self, that vision that you have for your future, where you're going, the direction you're moving towards, there are new people that have that same energy and mindset that would love to be your friend. So create connections there, focusing on your future self, and be okay with letting go of connections that helped you in the self that you are no longer, or that you've
Growing
kind
out
of
of.
grown
Yeah.
out of. Right.
Yeah.
There's a great book. I don't know if you've read it, Dwight, but it's Dr. Henry McLeod's Necessary Endings. And it really helped me because I used to be really uncomfortable with endings in relationships, whether they're platonic or otherwise, because I felt like I had failed in some way. And I had this idea that relationships should last forever. And he really puts it into a great context where relationships, we are designed to have them. They teach us something about ourselves, and when they're finished teaching us, then we need to move on and they need to move on. And so it's an expectation. It's natural for relationships to begin and to have endings. He relates it to pruning back a bush. And, every so often you need to prune back, you need to cut back the bush so that it can flourish and grow even bigger and stronger. And so that's what we need to do with our relationships. And I never looked at it that way until I read that book. And it's really helped me release the guilt that I felt when I no longer wanted to be in relationship with somebody.
Thank you for recommending that book. At the end of the day, mindset, in order to change our mindset, we need to do things. We have to read, we have to do different practices. Was there other things you did besides that book that helped you and grounded you during the transitions through your life?
Um, yes, I mean, just different mindset shifts. I used years ago, I mean, probably decades now, but I used to have a big fear of failure. And that was holding me back. And I realized, failure is another box. It's another label that we may choose to put on certain outcomes. And I decided that's not, I don't live in that box anymore. That does not exist in my life. And I truly don't believe failure is in my life, because I always say, okay, Betsy, what is the worst that can happen if I do X? The worst case is the outcome is not what I had hoped. Okay. I've had a lot of outcomes that are not what I had hoped in my life. When you reach your 50s, I think most of us can say that. And I'm going to need to pivot. And I've had to pivot in my past. It didn't kill me. And most importantly, I will have learned one, if not several things that I get to take with me for the rest of my life that make me stronger uh, and better as a person. That's the worst case scenario. And research has shown worst case scenario happens 3% of the time. So that's a risk that I'm willing to take. So that mindset shift really helped me address when I was feeling resistance to making a change because I thought I might quote unquote fail. So that was a big one. That was life changing for me. So I passed that on to my children, and you really become invincible when you release yourself of that option. And I've taught that to my agent. I have a real estate company. I taught that to my agents. We actually call them learnings. And every Tuesday we have a team meeting, a company meeting, and we all bring our learnings in. And these are things that in other companies, you would probably hide the fact that you did this because you would be embarrassed that you forgot to put XYZ in a contract, or, some mistake that you made. We're all human, we all make them. But by sharing them and what we learned from them, we see that everybody else grows, and they are learning and growing exponentially because everyone in the group is sharing everything they learned in the last week. So it's almost like a contest now, who can outdo each other in terms of the learnings that we have in our weekly meetings. So that was a really big one
That's
for
a
me.
large pivot. That's a big
Yeah,
pivot,
yeah,
biggest
yeah.
pivot, because like you shared so much great knowledge and information. we go through the seasons of life with people and we feel bad. I was terrible for that. Oh, I used to brag. I got this friend for 30 some years. Yet they were a boat anchor. They were literally an energy vampire in my life. And I continue to stick up for them. And people in my tribe, and I'm part of their tribe, would be telling me, why are you hanging out with that person? Well, we've been friends. So if they're not serving you to grow and feel good about yourself. So that was about 7, 8 years ago. And I share this on podcasts all the time, so I won't get into details of it. But when I do lifestyle coaching, I have a process called the 70-30 principle and how I look at people now and how, and that 70-30 principle, it's emotional. How does it make me feel emotional? What are my what are my physical triggers? Do I
Mhm.
smile? Do I have a
Mhm.
happy thought thinking they may have
Mhm.
said something that wasn't the greatest, but I can't wait to see him again? Or if I think more than once, if it's 50% of the time, could be good, could be bad. Goodbye. You're
Mhm.
out of my tribe. I don't care if you've been in my season since the day you were born.
Yeah.
I'm gonna leave respectfully.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can't. Some people get really irate, and that's just life. But so I really liked you talking about that, and you talked about your real estate group. That is so unique. Thank you for sharing that. You're a business owner or a mentor to people, telling them it's okay to share what's going on, your vulnerabilities. We're going to celebrate the fact that you admitted you forgot to put this on a contract.
Yeah.
Like, I thought that was amazing. That is so smart. And I deal with a lot of been coaching entrepreneurs and businesses for the now going on to 23 years that I've been in business doing my business and coaching people. And that's one thing now I'm going to share with them. Hey, go listen to this podcast. You need to
Mhm.
listen to Betsy. Like, that is awesome. Let's celebrate not always our wins. Let's celebrate our
Mhm.
mistakes.
Mhm.
And somebody else in the room can learn from it. Now
Mhm.
you become a stronger unity. And
Yeah.
the people in the room that don't like that vulnerability are going to sneer. I would watch for that body language. You're not part of
Mhm.
this tribe. Why are you
Mhm.
sneering because that person did that? Or thinking, haha, I've never done that. They don't say it, but you can see it. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Well, I have
good,
found
good for
it
you.
it really builds the trust,
Oh, it's awesome. I love
Yeah.
that.
But can I just mention a couple of things that you just um
Absolutely. Sorry. Go
so
ahead.
I was thinking when you were talking about that debating whether you should keep somebody in your tribe, I always say if it's not a hard yes, it's a no.
Short and sweet,
Yeah,
right?
right.
Short and
So,
sweet.
and then the other thing when you mentioned in your coaching about feelings, so one of the things that has come up repeatedly, people come to me and say, how do I become more aware of boxes that are confining me and also like people, right, that are confining me? And so what I learned, and this was very difficult for me because I wasn't raised like this, but you were talking about how you feel, getting in touch with my body and how I feel. How does this decision sit with me? Because your body will tell you before your mind tells you if you listen to it. And so I have there's an app, it's a free app called How We Feel. It's fantastic. And so it you can set it so that it's free and you can set it to vibrate. It's on your phone. You can vibrate whether you have like stressful times during the day or you have certain things that are going to happen during the day and it will check in with you and you click the bubble on, all these different bubbles. You pick the one that's your feeling. And then if you want, you can write in who you're with, what you're doing, and what environment you're in. And you can start seeing the trends. Who's bringing you down? Who's lifting you up? What environments weigh you down? And what environments make you feel lighter and more free? So that's been a wonderful thing for me, as well as I literally printed out a feelings wheel, which is like a color wheel with feelings on it, because when I started this journey, I didn't even have that vocabulary. I went to the therapist for the first time and she said, Betsy, how do you feel? And I said, I feel pretty good. And she's like, well, what other feelings do you experience? And I thought it was like a trick question. I'm like, well, sometimes I feel bad. And she's like, okay, and other feelings. And I really didn't have any other vocabulary. I either felt good or I felt bad. And so that was a whole learning for me. I bought the book Atlas of the Heart by Brene Brown. It's basically an encyclopedia of any feeling you ever could experience
She's
because
amazing.
yes, and once you have a name for it, it really helps you identify with it and understand it. So those are some resources that I have found helpful in my journey on getting more in touch with how I feel.
That's fantastic because I find people listening and watching, I've had people reach out to me and say, well, when is ever going to be enough, your development journey? Till the day I take my last breath. What do you mean? Well, I always want to constantly evolve. If I enter life real thinking or finish the last part of my life, 30, 40 years or whatever the case may be, if I don't think I can learn from others, that they don't have something magical that hasn't come out of their mouth yet, and I think
Mhm.
I'm all that, my life's on a hamster wheel. And I coach on that all the time. Go to work, go home, get paid, whether it's a company, whether it's private, you're a career driven person. At the end of the day, I relish and I literally embrace change and acceptance of others because I find myself personally, the more I accept others, the more they accept me, the more
Mhm.
genuine I am with them, and the more I am cognizant of my behaviors, my body language, and not being afraid to say to others, Betsy, that, you know what, I got something going on right now, and I'm not quite engaged with what you're saying, and I believe you deserve the 100% of me. And
Mhm.
right now, you're not getting it. Can we delay this conversation? Can we have
Mhm.
this later? Can we have it tomorrow? I promise you we will have it. But right now I just have something else that's come up. That's how I raised my kids. They'd come into the house and okay, I could let's talk. Right now, dad's just in the middle of something.
Mhm.
Right. And I'm sorry, I just don't have the mental capacity for you. And can we talk later? Sometimes it
Mhm.
would, okay, dad, thanks. Other times it would be, nah, you know what I mean? But that's how I learned how to navigate the intensity
Mhm.
of people that don't have the emotional IQ that an adult's supposed to have. Not
Mhm.
always has, but supposed to
Mhm.
have. And I learned to be a better dad, a better friend, a better parent, and I learned to be a more of a student of human nature. They're all adults now. The youngest is 26, the oldest is going to be 39 this year. So at the end of the day, I tried my best, but they were my I want to say project, but they were my sounding board. I'm going to try this and see how it works on younger people. Everybody's always wanting to coach the older people. What about we start at a younger age? What about we
Mhm.
start right in school? What's your thoughts on that and how we need to educate, the youth of our
Oh
world
goodness.
today, right? Like you
Oh yeah.
talked about doing things with your family, and I made mistakes. You know what, though, people listening, watching, I admit them to my kids. Even today, if it comes
Mhm.
up or something that I have a realization, I communicate with them,
Yeah.
right? Sorry,
Yeah.
I did that. Dad wasn't the best. Don't do that.
Yeah. No, no, I'm the same way. I'm very real with my children. I was when they're 20, they're about to turn 26 and one's 27. I have two daughters. Um, I, it's funny because like the first 5 or 6 years of their life, I was very much a helicopter parent. You know, I could feel myself um kind of raising them the way I was raised, where I mean, and I had a great childhood. I'm not saying I didn't, but my parents were very, very involved in everything. So, you know, there wasn't a spelling test that I wasn't quizzed on 10 times before I took it. My mother knew every test I had to take. My dad quizzed me on math and science. My mother did the English and grammar stuff. And I remember going to college wondering if I could do it because I had all this support at home and I was going away to college and I wouldn't have this backup support. And when my one daughter was in first grade, I remember she had just had her first project to take home, a weekend project, and it was, the whole poster board collage, pick a person, a famous person that inspires you, and she picked Rosa Parks, and we spent the weekend on that poster, and really I spent the weekend on the poster. I mean, I made sure it looked perfect going in, and I carried it in for her because I didn't want it to get dirty. And I remember waiting for in line with the kids, and Mrs. Walton was in the front of the classroom, and all these kids were holding their posters so proudly, beaming. And I was looking at their posters, and some were torn and dirty, and handwriting going, down a mountain slope, hadn't been properly done and misspellings and photos slapped on sideways. And I remember saying to myself, how could a mother send that poster in? And then I looked at my daughter, and she was not smiling. She wasn't proud because she didn't do this poster. And I was like, well, I said to myself, what am I doing? What am I hoping for? That, and I think I was overcompensating because I did feel some guilt that I was a single parent, and I wanted to make sure that that teacher knew that she came from a home that her mother was involved and cared about and, wanted excellence. But I did a 180 that day, and I went cold turkey, and I said, from here on out, the children are going to do everything on their own, like everything that they're able to do on their own. And because at the end of the day, I said, what is the long-term goal here? I don't care about the grade. I want them to be independent, confident, contributing members of society. And so then I remember I would just say, they would come to me and I would always say, I don't know, but I know you'll figure it out. And I must have said that, I don't know, 10 times a day. And I remember just the other day, I was talking to one of my daughters who they're in their later 20s now. And I remember saying, what are you going to do? Like we were on the phone, and I was like, wow, wonder what they're going to do. I said, what are you going to do? And she said, I don't know, mom, but I'll figure it out. And it brought me such joy to know that, because that's what I want. That was my goal. And I'm so glad that I recognized it when Maria was in first grade, Elena was in kindergarten, because I was on a very different path. And I got a lot of criticism. I was got kicked out of the good mom box a lot because,
Oh
you know,
gosh.
yeah, I mean, if my child left their lunch on the counter, I mean, I lived a mile from school. It stayed on the counter. I wasn't driving it to school. And I love my children, but I knew that if I drove it to school, what would that teach them? And they only did that once. Each of them did it once, and then they didn't forget again. But I remember that first time the lady called me from school and said, the child's lunch is on, Maria said she forgot her lunch. And I said, yep, she did. And they said, well, will you bring it? Does she have money? I'm like, nope, but it's only going to be a couple of hours. She won't do it again. And I remember that the lady was judging me. And so that was hard because I did some things that were not in the mainstream of parenting at the time. But I'm so happy that I mean, not that I didn't make mistakes, I did, but in that area, I absolutely feel like I did the right decision, and they're both so confident and just so independent and happy adults.
That's awesome. We've got so many commonalities. It's not, it's not even funny. I did the sitting at the table, helping, what do they call it? Where we had to do this picture thing for my one daughter, and we had to buy clay, and like it is supposed to portray a scene. I can't think of the name of what they call them in school. She was in junior high, like middle school. And yeah, and I remember I was so, no, we have to put the little tree this way, and we got to do this way. We got to create the hill this way. And at the end of the day, we got it to school. We got it done a couple days later, and I wasn't a clay person at all, cracked and stuff. And she thought it was kind of, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? And she got a good mark on it. She took it in, but I also realized, not the same realization as you, that your daughter didn't have a smile on her face. I just realized that, if I'm going to help her for everything so she doesn't stumble and fall, what's going to happen to her as an adult? And
Yeah.
now she's a very successful, this one daughter, they're all successful in their own right, but this one daughter that I'm talking about, she's a successful nurse. She travel nurses down in the US too. Like she lives in my home province of Alberta, in Calgary. She goes down. She was in Seattle for 3 months, travel nursing, plus she nurses here, but she's just a go-getter. She hit high
Hmm.
school, that same girl, because I stopped helping her so much. She hit high school, had honors, was in she was in dance. She was in two different dance troops. She was in the school's dance program. She went to a performing arts school,
Hmm.
and she just like, I can do it on my own. I can
Nice.
figure this out. And now this many years later, she turns 30 this year, and it's just amazing when I look at my kids and the journey they've gone through. I made mistakes. We have conversations. Just own up to your mistakes, people. Your kids want to be worthy in your eyes, and you want to be worthy in theirs. Don't kid yourself. You want them to look at you still as that hero when they were a little kid. It's
Mhm.
a total different hero worship.
Yeah.
It's called respect,
Yeah.
right? They respect the fact that you're letting them grow, but they know if your things go wrong, they can call you. That's
Hmm.
the way I developed myself and continue to develop myself as a single parent because I went through it, right? But I went through it with five of them. I had joint custody, and then one of them went out on her own when she was 16, 17. But then I got
Mhm.
full time custody of all four of three of the girls and my son
Oh,
and
wow.
raised him as a single dad. I was judged by everybody. So I get what you were saying. I was stuck in I was stuck into the parents would avoid me. It was
Mm.
sad. I'd go to the kids' schools and they'd avoid me, right?
Mm.
And they never even asked me. They just assumed that I was a bad person, right? Because our
Oh.
society automatically looked at the woman and said he's the fault, right?
Yeah.
And then started growing over the years from them going through elementary, junior high, high school, and tons of those parents I still communicate with. They still know me or will run into one another. Oh, you were always the greatest dance dad.
Mm.
You were always the greatest gymnastics, soccer,
Mhm.
everything. Because I
Yeah.
was chasing them to everything. And there was a tribe of people that respected me and didn't judge me and didn't make assumptions about me.
Hmm.
So hard to find nowadays when you go through, even today, going through divorce, women and men,
Yeah.
don't judge one another until
Yeah.
you honestly have walked a mile in their shoes. You don't
Yeah.
know what you're talking
Yeah.
about. Don't let the other parent tell you what that parent's like,
Yeah.
right? Go up and
Yeah.
say, hi.
Yeah.
Hi, Betsy. I'm Dwight. Pleasure to meet
Yeah.
you. And if they scowl at you, then turn around and walk off.
Yeah.
Yeah. So being a single parent is character building, but man, was it rewarding as well,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I look at it this many years later, all my kids still communicate with me. All my
Mm.
kids still ask a certain amount of advice. Sometimes they don't, and then they wish they would have. And whatever, that's the journey of life, people.
Yeah.
Smile, you're gonna cry, you're gonna yell, you're gonna scream, you're gonna have some angry moments, but life is in session. This is not a dress rehearsal,
Yeah.
right? Work on yourself, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So one of the things that your definition of success has obviously evolved through everything that you've shared with us today. Has your definition of success since you started living more authentically over the years changed than what it was when you were younger?
Yeah. Yeah. When I was younger, I was always going after the next promotion, when I was in farm, it was always the next promotion or the next pay increase. When I first started real estate, it was, the accolades, the being recognized regionally or nationally for our sales. But over the years, it definitely has changed. I created a nonprofit. My goal daily is, my measure of success, and I ask myself this every evening, did my presence enhance someone's life today? And if it did, then I had a successful day. And that's very different than the way I was living, you know, 20 years
Yeah,
ago.
no, that's good though. I like to hear that. The reason I asked that question is the evolution. If we have to realize our evolution, and when we accept the fact and are aware of where we're going, when you get there, it's more satisfying too. When we,
Mm.
I never ever thought could accomplish that because all these naysayers said I couldn't, or me having imposter syndrome. I'm telling myself this stuff. I look in the mirror and
Mm.
go, like, why would that person want to work with me, or why would they want me to help them? And really, we need to understand that we are all worthy individuals, right? We just need
Mm.
to find our tribe, find the people that resonate with you, and work at one person at a time. Quit
Mm.
trying to do it all at once when you're
Yeah.
pivoting and growing. And I love that word pivot. Of course, a question I was going to ask you about it, but again, there's just so much I could ask you, but we're gonna get to a point of wrapping up this show. This conversation's been so powerful. I really appreciate it. Everything that you shared. Before we wrap up, though, What final message would you like to share with the listeners or people watching who are just beginning to question the boxes they're in and need a reminder to keep giving a heck and never giving up?
Yeah. Hmm. I mean, like I said, exploring what boxes are no longer serving you, get in touch with your emotions and your feelings. That's going to be your first sign, and trust them. That was hard for me to do at the beginning, is to trust them. And then try to, discern what major fear is holding you back, whether it's fear of failure, fear of loss, loss of social connection, loss of status, loss of financial security, or fear of change. And then address those head on. Um, I think that's what's helped me m- move towards leading a more authentic and fulfilling life.
Wow, that is so true. I appreciate that. So what's next for you, Betsy?
I'm actually still trying to figure that out. I'm I'm contemplating writing a second book, a follow-up book. I just created a course that complements the first book, but there has been a request for further exploration of the topic, so I might do that. I've been doing a lot of speaking, both in person and on podcasts. And I'm also looking to do some collaborations with on the real estate side. Nothing to do with this kind of personal journey, but also on the real estate side, doing some collaborations with my competitors and creating products that will serve the industry.
That's amazing. So on top of all this, you want to better your industry, which is that's admirable. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Like so many people are like, we don't want to share this. We don't want to work with that person. They're going to steal this. They're going to steal that. They're going
Mm.
to take my idea. You know what? We're supposed to support one another in life. Come on, people. People that
Yeah.
are interested in me aren't going to necessarily like Betsy, or people that like Betsy aren't going to necessarily like me. And maybe they like us both, but Betsy's got more of a happy-go-lucky personality. But that's okay. We don't
Yeah.
have to always be in competition mode, right?
No, I believe in abundance, not scarcity. And I believe if I put that out, that's what comes back.
Absolutely. So, where can people connect with you and grab also a copy of Breaking Boxes, Dismantling the Metaphorical Boxes That Bind Us?
I am so easy to find. It's my name. So my name is Betsy Pepine. So I have a website, betsypepine.com. I'm on all the social platforms with my name at Betsy Pepine. My book is on Amazon and all the major book retailers online, as well as available on my website, betsypepine.com.
Fantastic. Those new to the Give a Heck podcast, go to giveaheck.com. Go to the top hit podcast. You'll see a picture of Betsy and you will see detailed show notes as well as the full unedited transcript of the show. If you want to look up something that was said, not have to listen to it, you can go read it. You can actually, it's broken down by segments, really easy to go through, plus all the links for Betsy's social media. Her website will be there as well. So just go to giveaheck.com. So, Betsy, thank you for showing up with such honesty, heart, and hope. Your story is a reminder that we don't have to stay stuck in the roles we've outgrown, right? And it's never
No,
too late to rewrite that script. So, to everyone listening, if something in this conversation stirred you, something in you personally, don't ignore it. Take that first baby step. There is people, such amazing people like Betsy and myself that can support you to help you give a heck and live with purpose, right? And with intent. So really, again, please give a heck about yourself. We do. You just have to reach out so we can support you through your into your purpose and having freedom of the shackles that society and the boxes that we put ourselves into has slowed us down and made us live a life of just linear and not growth. Any last final words before I close off the show?
no, I feel like we've covered the topic.
Oh, I appreciate you. This has been fantastic. So I'm going to wrap up now, listeners. Betsy is amazing. If you are a person that likes YouTube, go watch it. This is because then you can see people's mannerisms, their body language. Betsy's got beautiful glasses, a great smile. Right there you go. So go take a look. Don't take my word for it. So thanks so much for being on Give a Heck, Betsy. I appreciate your time and sharing some of your experiences so that others too can learn it is never too late to give a heck. Thank you for taking time out of your day and listening to Give a Heck. If you find value, I'd appreciate you sharing with your friends and family so they too can learn how to live life on purpose, not by accident. So you do not miss the next episode, please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and please also post a review. I look forward to reading your comments. This has been Dwight Heck. If you want to check out other podcast episodes or today's show notes, please check out my website, giveaheck.com. And until next time, together let us all strive to give a heck.